to everybody's surprise, at least to my surprise, the San Antonio Spurs are playing really, really well right now. They're 14-11. They're 6th in the Western Conference. They're 7-8 at home, which is pretty surprising for a San Antonio Spurs team. They're 7-8 at home, but they're 7-3 on the road, which is a big step from last year. Last year they were 13-24 on the road. This season they already have more than half of those wins, and I just have to give it up for the Spurs because this team is a perfect combination of veterans and young players. You have DeMar DeRozan, who's still averaging 20 points per game, but has took on an added playmaker role and is now averaging 7 assists per game. He has took a huge step in his game in that aspect. Marcus Aldridge is still there, taking less of responsibility on the scoring end. But then you have Keldon Johnson, DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker's playing phenomenal, Derek White. You got vets in Rudy Gay and Patty Mills, Keldon Johnson, if I didn't mention him already. And then I think this is a guy that I've been enamored with. I was watching a lot of film on him today, and that's Devin Vassell. I think Devin Vassell is the most slept-on rookie in this class. He's not getting talked about. One, because he plays on the Spurs, and two, because he's not putting up great numbers. But ever since he started playing in the league, he's gotten better each month. December, he averaged 3 points per game. Then in January, that jumped up to 6. And now in February this month, he's averaging 7 points per game in 18 minutes and shooting 50% from the field and 40% from three. He's the best rookie in terms of defensive points added. They have a chart for that. In terms of offensive points added and defensive points added, Devin Vassell is first place by far. He's
among rookies.
Yes, he's a really excellent defender. And right now, he leads the Spurs in three-point percentage at 40.7%. And only 36% of Vassell's threes are open threes. That's the same percentage as Patty Mills. And Patty Mills is a guy that guys don't leave open. So you can see right now that Devin Vassell already has that respect in terms of spacing the floor. And I just got to give it out to R.C. Buford. Keldon Johnson wasn't drafted with a high pick. Derek White was a gem. You look at Lonnie Walker. He was a guy, too. He wasn't a high draft pick either. And they've built this team on guys who they have kind of stolen in the draft. I mean, Devin Vassell, we kind of projected him to go 11th overall, but I think he was the perfect Spurs guy. Him and Patrick Williams, to me, were the perfect Spurs guys. Like, they kind of personified what I see when I watch Spurs basketball, and I think they're a really great team right now. It's a perfect combination, and they protect the ball really well. They're the best team in terms of not turning over the ball. They only average 10 turnovers per game.
Yeah, and I know you wanted Devin Vassell for the Knicks, and his skill set has transferred over perfectly to the NBA. He's an elite three-point shooter, 40% from the three-point line, and a great defender. He's shown that all season long, and although the numbers aren't there yet, they'll come along. And I said in the preseason preview, what it was for the Spurs this season was about embracing that youthful renaissance, bringing back the Fiesta uniforms. They got all this good young talent, and they've done exactly that. DeMar DeRozan, even though he's kind of taken a step back in his attacking mentality, I feel like he's played better this season than he did last year, whether it's distributing the basketball, being a leader for these young guys. Keldon Johnson has just exploded onto the scene. I mean, he is so fun to watch.
Damn.
I feel like he's really broken out this year and proven that he could be a guy for them to build around. But you mentioned all the names, the young talent. DeJounte Murray is really playing up to what we thought he would be. Keldon Johnson has been awesome this year. Lonnie Walker has shown some really good signs. Derek White has been injured, but we've seen from him in the past some really good signs. And Devin Vassell, there's a couple more, but I really love what they're doing, the guys they're bringing in, how they're building things. And it's just the Spurs. Like, it sounds like ridiculous to say, but that's just what they do. They know how to bring in talent, and they have the perfect system to develop it. I don't know how much longer Pop has got, but he's setting them up perfectly for whoever his successor is. Maybe it's Becky Hammon.
I think it will be Becky Hammon.
And
I thought it would be Tim Duncan, but he stepped down. So now I think it would probably be Becky Hammon.
Becky Hammon has been people speak glowingly of her in the NBA. Like everything you hear
really
about
good.
her is great. So I would be excited to see that. And supposedly she has really taken well to Pop's system. So maybe it wouldn't be that much of a difference. Obviously, it's going to be a huge difference losing one of the greatest coaches of all time. But keeping that same system in line and having all this young talent, they are only headed up, and I would buy stock in them right now. And I can guarantee you'll cash in on it 5 years from now. You know, maybe they're not back like the dynasty they were, but I think they're going to become right up there with those top Western Conference teams in the next few years.
I think the transition that Greg Popovich had to make from dynasty to playoff team to now coaching these young players, I think it's been great. I think it shows that the fact that how good he is as a coach. I think this team, it predicates itself on not turning the ball over. I think defensively they've been really, really good this year, and they're always going to have that in them. DeMar DeRozan, like you said, has taken that backseat to be more of a playmaker. He's evolved his game. Still that mid-range deadly shooter, but he's also become that playmaker for that team. Doesn't need to take as many shots as he used to or be erratic. That's good. DeJounte Murray has finally, he's been healthy. He's been that playmaker, that defensive stopper for them at the guard spot. Keldon Johnson, coming out of Kentucky, Calipari used to talk about him a lot, how he worked hard. He was a hard worker. He was always going to be gritty. And you see it in the league right now. He's a great finisher. He's got his jump shot up, and he could play defense. This team is built on guys who were pretty slept on in the draft. A lot of guys who was pretty slept on, Devin White, DeJounte Murray, even Keldon Johnson. He was a lottery pick, but he was slept on. And they just built themselves up in not a small market, but, a quiet market, and they got better. And now this team is definitely competing. I remember last year, they counted LA and DeMar DeRozan out. And now this year, you see these two guys being that veteran, having that veteran leadership for this team. And I think it's going to be really good down the stretch. They still got some young guys on the team, Lonnie Walker, Lucas Simonik. They're good players, and this team is going to be really good. And they're going to have some cap next year, too, so look out.
If I'm not mistaken, DeJounte Murray wasn't a lottery pick. He was the 27th pick.
Yeah, he wasn't a lottery. He was actually a project. He wasn't supposed to play his first couple of years.
And he's been awesome.
Yeah, so they've been really great at drafting. Credit to R.C. Buford. He's been one of the best general managers in the NBA. And you can probably say the past decade or past 2 decades, he's been phenomenal.
Very quietly, too. Like, people don't really talk about the Spurs, even when they were, like, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, because they weren't personalities, and obviously that plays in the media. But San Antonio has always done a really great job.
I think that's what they look for in the draft, getting guys without that personality, just guys who are grit, going to work hard, come in every day. And that's why they're where they're at right now. Even if they flop out, I still think the young talent they have is good enough where they're going to be good in the long stretch, regardless if it's Becky Hammond or Greg Popovich.
Yeah, like part of me, of course, I don't want to see Greg Popovich go because he's one of the greatest basketball minds to ever coach a game. But I think Becky Hammond is going to be that next head coach for the Spurs. She's going to make history because she's going to be the first women's head coach in the NBA. And I think she will be fantastic for them. The Spurs, it's really a win-win situation. They could try and trade DeRozan at the deadline or keep him. Personally, I would keep him to try to make a playoff push. But if you make the playoffs, great. You give your young guys experience in the postseason. If you don't, now you get a chance to be in the lottery and have a chance to get to take one of these top guys.
And I remember when they played Denver, Devin White blossomed in that role against Denver in that playoff series when they took him to 7. So, you can get some type of performance from one of your young guys if they make the playoffs. So it's always good to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's always good. You look at that's the same thing that happened with the Boston Celtics when Isaiah Thomas and then were there, Jaylen Brown, Terry Rozier were the young players there. Just making the playoffs helped them develop tremendously. That's why I'm always under the impression it's better to make the playoffs than to not, because that experience is unmatched. There's nothing like a playoff atmosphere. And I think this year, especially because the Spurs are one of the best teams in terms of IQ, they take advantage of teams that aren't that smart, honestly. They're going to rack up a lot of wins, and they've been a much improved road team. Is that due to them being better and maturing or just not having fans in the stands? I'm not sure which one it is, but I think they're going to be fine, and they have a really bright future. Yeah. And I'm high on Vassell.
And one of the things we talked about with the Nets was the lack of effort. That's something you're never going to see from the Spurs. Just because Greg Popovich is on his guys, his accountability level is higher than probably any other coach in the NBA. And also, they have a really young core that's providing right now. So it's not like, outside of DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, who obviously need to take some nights for rest here and there. These guys have that youthful exuberance, so I think they're going to be a really fun team to watch down the stretch here the rest of the regular season. And I think they're going to end up being a playoff team.